when, let's say, a tradition doesn't really serve your family anymore and it becomes more of a burden. If people are basically saying, like, I don't really want to do it, just their attitudes is really against it, there's something going on there.
What if your family's most meaningful December tradition took only 10 minutes and no shopping? Oh, that'd be great. Welcome to the Dad Central podcast, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. Our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care because Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man. And when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. So today we're going to be chatting about simplified December traditions that calm, not clutter on the Dad Central show. Drew, first of all, how things going with you?
Oh, they're good. It's December 2nd, so thankfully it doesn't feel too cluttered yet, and maybe I'll learn something in our conversation today that helps keep it that way.
So are you
How
saying
are
we
you?
don't learn other conversations?
Pardon, am I saying I don't learn from the other
No,
conversations?
we don't learn from other
No.
conversations.
Oh, we do, for sure.
Okay.
I'm just saying, maybe this one will be something I take even more to heart and apply.
All right. So this episode is all about reducing December overwhelm by choosing intentional, calming family traditions. Before we kick into it, what are your thoughts before we dive deep?
Well, depending on your background or even what you experienced growing up, there could be traditions that you just carried through. Maybe it's generations, and those might be fantastic, and you love it and you keep doing it. Others may actually feel quite heavy, and some you might be like, "Why do we even do this?" It seems to always create tension or issues. I don't know if any of those resonate, but it'll be an interesting conversation today to see how if anything that we're sharing does resonate for the listeners.
Yeah. So before we get into it, let's acknowledge that December brings pressures, busyness, kids' schedules, work deadlines, expectations. And we also have to realize too that traditions either calm or clutter. Calm or the two C's, calm or clutter. And we also want, during this conversation, want to set your expectations with practical ideas, doable traditions, and how to avoid overwhelm. Well, not only just during the year, but especially during the holiday season. So let's start with our first segment, identify what actually matters. What are your thoughts on this first segment, Drew?
Well, I love the title and identifying what actually matters. And this is just the way that I'm wired is I feel that there's often a lot of either societal or maybe even cultural or even familial pressure to do things a certain way. I mean, you often see this a lot with weddings, but in particular, I think the holidays too. And just the way that I'm wired, so don't shoot the messenger, is that I tend to resist traditions that I feel don't work for me. And sometimes it gets backlash. Sometimes people want to argue with me, and that's okay. I'll have the debate with you. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe that it has to work or matter for you based on, and I like to look at values, the value system underpinning what the decision you're making is to me what truly matters. And so if your value is connection and real relationship, is overscheduling and building like traveling here, traveling there, doing this, having to feel like you have to prepare and the house has to look absolutely picture perfect and you've got to spend so much time and money just to have people come into your home when you never actually even take a moment to sit down and look across from your partner or to your kids and actually discuss or share about how meaningful your relationship is and how happy you are to be spending the holidays together. To me, that just doesn't work for me. And so I guess the expectation that you have, and don't get me wrong, traditions and memories, and to me, they're a great anchor. They can build connection, but it sometimes what I've seen is that the expectations become a little bit overwhelming or burdensome, and we miss the true value of actually connection in the process of trying to carry on the tradition. And so that for me is where it's worth taking a moment to reflect and discuss with everyone who's involved in the decisions, maybe your partner in particular, and say the values that we hold and are important to our family, are they actually going to be brought to life through the way we're handling these holidays? And so that for me is, you know, the big deciding factor. That's kind of how I look at things. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I want to add on to what Drew has shared, and I have, I want to put a question out there, two questions out there. What traditions do your kids really remember? What are those traditions that they really remember? And then the second thing is, what drains energy and what fills energy? Because again, holiday season, there's going to be a lot of energy you have to put out. Put in mind or put in place as much as possible the activities that fills energy, not drains energy, especially during the holiday season. Season, because if you're always doing draining energy activities, that amplifies the opportunity of friction, confrontation. So I really want to put out there, ask your kids, maybe even this holiday season, ask them, hey, what things during the holiday season of the past do you remember? And go from that go from that position. And also what's gonna add energy, or as I like to say a lot these days, what are the things you get to do instead of things you got to do? So I'll just leave it at that. Drew, do you want to add anything else before we move on to our next segment?
Yeah, depending on the age of your kids, the first question, you might want to ask yourself that question, or even ask your spouse that question. Like, what traditions do you really remember as a kid, and what made them so meaningful to you? So I think that is a good starting point, especially if your kids are pretty young. And then you can evaluate, well, you know what, how do we go about creating that? Or maybe even you have a conversation with your parents or your family, like, so this is what we remember. Like, what were you planning or what were you trying to achieve? And then no, right, there was no plan. We just did what we did. Well, that's fine, but at least you can at least gather some data to help you make the decision as you move forward.
All right. Next up, simple, and I want to underline that word, simple traditions that calm. So, Drew, what are some simple traditions that you've been able to be part of during the holiday season in the past that are simple that cause some calm?
Maybe I want more of these, and this is what I'm looking to learn today to get more of these. But uh, you know, so for us, physical activity is always great. Not everyone loves to get outside in wintertime, especially when it's sloppy and terrible. But you know what? When it's around the holidays and you've got that beautiful fresh snowfall, it sounds so quiet and peaceful outside, and everything's so pretty and white. It's really nice to just, all right, we're just going to go outside, and you go for like this beautiful walk in the peace of the snow falling, and looking around and seeing the Christmas lights, or just taking that time out of the house, into the fresh air, and just being together. So that's a simple one. I mean, truthfully, if you look at the research on just getting outside and being in nature and physical activity, that in itself is a reason to help bring down our central nervous system to a more peaceful state, because that's actually proven to do that. So that would be one. And we like being outside. So that's another option. Another one that we have done, I'd say, around the dinner table is, we'll either have maybe a theme, and we'll pass around, okay, pull something out, okay, well, share us something this, or we'll focus on gratitude. Hey, tell me three things you're grateful for today. And we've done that around the dinner table. It does with five kids and seven total of us. Sometimes it gets a little bit amped up because people get excited. They want to jump in on other people's stories and all that other stuff. But the reality is, focusing on gratitude is also another way to bring more calm and reduce stress. And so we do that sometimes around the dinner table. Um, this is not often, but it in our house, but it's one that I do value is literally having nothing scheduled, where there's no plan, there's no nothing, and it's just like we do nothing tonight. There's no commitments, and if we feel like doing something, we'll play a game, or we'll just like read, or we'll just watch a movie together. But there's literally no commitment, no schedule, no nothing. Sometimes hard to do because you're like, what do we do with all this? Especially when there's 5 kids all in the house and they've got energy. But that could be valuable. A couple other ideas that we have here that we throw out there is maybe there's around the holidays an ornament. And usually kids have maybe made ornaments, and so you can make it into a one ornament story night. So you pick one of the ornaments and you just share stories about it. Um, that's an option. We love a good hot chocolate in our house, especially after we've been outside. So you can make a warm drink sort of reconnection opportunity. If you want to tie it to a day, you could warm drink Wednesday, right? And then you do a one reflection question as part of that while you're sitting down enjoying your hot chocolate. These are just some ideas that any dad can adapt, but you know what matters most is that you do it based on your family and what your family enjoys and is meaningful and relevant. Maybe it's music, maybe it's creative arts, maybe it's crafting, who knows, right? Just make it based on your family. Your thoughts, Ed?
The only thing I'll add on to what you've shared, and was a great share, is that whatever it is, make sure it's practical and it's low effort, and that creates connection. So practical, low effort traditions that create connection. And again, if you don't know where to start, ask your kids. If you don't know where to start, just ask them. I am sure they will tell you. And again, depends. You may have age specific things like that, and just ask them what they like to do, and see how you can align with that. Because again, especially during the holiday season, it's about the kids. It's about the kids. So if you can put something in place, and I like the idea that Drew said about the walk, depending where you are in the world, because there's not snow everywhere in December, but we're just blessed with it. But wherever you can put something that's specific, but just getting outdoors, I think, is so good to just being cooped up inside, but especially during the holiday season, just going for that walk. And a lot of times there's just people out there, and a lot of people seem to be in a good mood during the holiday season. So it's a good time to just get out there, just take a walk in the neighborhood and just go from there. But, keep it predictable but flexible, and don't force participation, invite connection. So don't force it, invite it. So let's move to our last conversation piece, avoiding the clutter trap. Drew, what's your thoughts?
Well, I guess we should talk about how to recognize when, let's say, a tradition doesn't really serve your family anymore and it becomes more of a burden. The first thoughts for me is that when you think about the holidays and having to do something that you've always done and you're like, oh, like, do we have to do this again? I think that's a clear sign. It has become more of a burden. If you notice that your children or your partner, they struggle to engage, when you said invite connection and don't force participation. If people are basically saying like, I don't really want to do it, whether they're actually saying it or whether their body language or their attitudes is really against it, that there's something going on there. Doesn't mean that it's a burden or doesn't mean something else. Who knows? But it's worth looking into and considering it. I think that if it's no longer producing a positive outcome or a positive memory or positive experience or building connection, then it may be something that is too much of a burden. If it brings in excessive financial hardship, it might be a burden. If it creates tension and stress in your relationship with your partner, it might be a burden. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it could be. So you just really have to look at the signs that are coming out as a result, and are they positive? healthy, constructive signs, or are they not so positive and sometimes potentially destructive? Again, it's just worth a look. It's a sign. It doesn't mean you have to stop it, or it can't be modified. You just have to be, I think, willing to evaluate it honestly and objectively. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. What about you, Ed? Do you want to talk about um, some signs that a tradition needs to be simplified, paused, or replaced, or
Yeah.
helping dads know how to talk with their partner kids about simplifying?
Yeah, thank you for the lead in there. I think I suggest this question to your partner and to your kids. What tradition do you want to keep, and which one would you like to skip this year? Simple question. Doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just say, what do you want? What do you want to keep from past celebration in the holidays? And what would you like to skip? Again, asking the question piece is so important and so critical year round, especially during the holiday season. It gets more amplified. You want to have a gauge on what your partner or what your kids are saying and work from there. Work from that point and get something that can get as much of a consensus as possible. Again, don't force, but invite. Don't force, but invite. So, based on the data that you get, go from there. Anything we want to continue in that segment before we close it down for today's conversation? Anything you want to add?
I'll just briefly share that sometimes I very much like to have a plan and very much like to say, well, let's work and execute the plan. Um, the reality is not to recognize when to simply just drop things or let them go and just go with the flow. At least that's part of my learning, I would say. Um, and so that's the final piece that I would end with.
All right. So, as you do a little recap, we talked today about identify what actually matters, simple traditions that calm, and then we ended up avoiding the clutter trap. So, takeaways, remember that December doesn't have to be busy to be meaningful. And then simple, low pressure traditions often create the strongest memories. Dads can lead the way in setting a calmer family rhythm. I like that one. A calmer family rhythm. I like that. And then saying no to clutter, make space for connection, rest, and presence. And I have a little call to action for our family, our listeners here. Pick one calming tradition, drop one draining obligation, and then communicate that plan with the family. And I also want to encourage the dads, choose connection over perfection. Drew, what resource do we have as a takeaway today?
Uh, I think I'll share this briefly, and then maybe this might be the resource for somebody. Is John Maxwell, mentor of mine, part of the Maxwell leadership team. At the end of the year, he takes time to actually rest, which we didn't really talk much about here, and to reflect so that he can then have a plan in place for the new year. And so he evaluates his full year during the holiday period, sort of between Christmas and New Year's. And so I think I want to, the final thing I want to say is dads, do focus on getting rest if possible for yourself through this December holiday period, as well as reflecting on how the year has gone and maybe identifying simply one thing that you'd like to do differently starting in the new year. I think that's can be a very powerful exercise. Reflection is truly the way to begin making shifts and changes to the positive, as well as learning from what has gone on and being able to figure out how to make adjustments that are going to move you closer to your goals. So maybe we'll talk about that in another podcast, and that could be the different. But there's right now that to me, my encouragement to dads is to take time to rest and reflect at the end of this year.
Okay, well, as we close down, as always, we'd like to say thank you for giving the most important thing, your time, to either listen or watch the show. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well.